Welcome to Lawyers Who Learn, where we explore how attorneys' engagement and lifelong learning fuels their growth. Join us to uncover these journeys and gain insights for your legal career.
Robert, welcome to Lawyers Who Learn. Super excited to have a rock star podcaster as my guest. As we discussed before we started airing, you were going to give me a public grade. And I want a full, honest public grade at the end, what worked and what didn't, so I can improve for the future. So thanks for joining.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here. And I've just had such a wonderful, warm welcome. And even off mic, we were talking like, love your energy. And I think that's a huge part of podcasting as well, is because you want your listeners to engage with you and really sense the energy. But yeah, very excited to be here and love what you're building.
I'll tell you this. To me, podcasting for me is about, I want to learn something new about you. And I'm genuinely interested in that. And anything else, hopefully, resonates with anybody listening because they can recognize that authentically. And I do want to learn a lot about you. And so I'm intrigued because let me start with what I've, in my brief research before this, just what I found about you. And just to help out here is, so you got an LLB, which I don't know what that means in the UK. Is that like a undergraduate legal degree?
It's like so I did a sort of business management, which had some law modules attached to it for an undergraduate degree at Leeds University. Yes. Okay. So BA honors is what we would call it equivalent.
Perfect. But not a lawyer, ever practicing lawyer.
Never a practiced lawyer. Come from a legal family, and maybe we'll get into that. But that was the reason for it.
Okay. And then essentially after that, up until 2017, you worked at several different legal recruitment firms. 2007, and correct me anywhere if I got this wrong, 2017 is when you founded, I wrote KC Partners, but I know there's a longer name. It's a KC Partners.
Yeah. So just in terms of, so you're almost there. You're like 95% there. So I started in recruiting, but my first legal recruiting was actually when I set up my business, KC Partners, which was called another name originally. And then we went through a buyout and renamed it or retweaked it to KC Partners. So that's what it is today. But I'd had about 8 to 10 years prior recruiting experience before setting up my own legal recruiting business, which is called KC Partners.
And then you became this internet phenomenon when you started in 2019, this podcast, Legally Speaking. I don't know if, and we'll get to this, if the red came after Clio was your sponsor or before, but I'm super curious about that story and conversation. And then in 2021, you've evolved the momentum from it and started Legal Speaking Club, where from what I gather, you're doing short form videos for law firms. It seems like marketing for law firm leaders. And what I saw is your top LinkedIn voice and you know how to put yourself out there. So that is the background, just in case I don't want to make you have to go through all that. Is there anything that I missed that should be said at that point?
No, I think just maybe a little bit meat on the bones that I can maybe share for your listeners. Sure. Maybe some of the rationale, some of the strategies, hacks that might be helpful.
We'll get there.
Whatever. But that was very good.
Awesome. Just to reiterate, this is Lawyers Who Learn. And I'm not sure if you know exactly what Lawline is. We are the largest provider of online continuing legal education in the US. There's 1 million attorneys in the US, 800,000 of them every year have to do courses. My passion in life is lifelong learning. So the thing is, I'm just using this number, probably only 2% of learning happens in an actual course. The other 98% happens in the practice and doing things and making mistakes and going and growing. And this podcast is to uncover and discover everybody's their journey and growth. While mostly we have attorneys as guests, you are very closely related in many different spaces into the legal world, not only having a top podcast, but legal recruiting and understanding what's going on there. So I'm not concerned at all that you will be able to provide insights in your journey and your growth and what you're in the space. Before I start with a question about all of this, I'm really interested in hearing your answer to this first question. You speak a lot, you do your own podcast. Is there anything that you wish that somebody would have asked you about your growth and your journey that you never really get to talk about a lot? Or is there something like you usually just tell the same story of like all these tips and tricks, but you wish you could be more substantive in an area? And maybe we'll go in that route if there's a topic to go about, or maybe you've covered it all.
No, and maybe as a part of that, I'm happy to talk deeper on, is I wish I was told earlier to put yourself out there more. The whole reason a lot of the opportunities and the wonderful things that you've said, I also sit on the board and advise and invest in legal tech businesses, run legal events now off the back of all of the things. And I think once you're in a corporate role, and I was in the corporate world for about a decade or so, I wish someone had tapped me on the shoulder and said, yep, it's great, the job's going great, but you need to think about building more of the Rob Hanna brand in the wider world and that network, because a lot of what I have done in recent years has come off the back of believing myself, having that confidence to put myself out there. And I couldn't have imagined all the things that, for people who follow social media, being invited to LinkedIn, collaborating with Gary Vaynerchuk, arguably one of the most successful social media people out there, and having Carol Baskin from Tiger King, Clio, a $3 billion sponsor. All of these things wouldn't have happened unless I started to build on me, if that makes sense, and build that brand. So I think if I was to encourage anyone, yes, do the doing. You have to be excellent at your job, but don't forget that actually building your brand and the extension of those networks and those conversations and the places and spaces they can take you, that can be immensely valuable.
By the way, I love that topic. And maybe that will be the only thing we talk about, because let's go as deep as we can, because it's such an important topic. So let's start with like day one, right? Where was the epiphany or the moment or the leap of faith where you started doing something with your voice and your brand? Was it, what happened there?
Yeah.
You can remember.
Yeah, exactly. So traditionally, LinkedIn, as a recruiter by trade, I'd been for many years prior to setting up my company, KC Partners, was very much just a static. It was basically people had their resumes or their CVs on there, and it wasn't an engaging platform really. It's just recruiters would reach out to people and say, hey, I've got this job, or maybe C-suite people would connect and speak to each other. Now, I noticed quite early that LinkedIn was pivoting or adapting and understanding that the world of work, the way people want to show up online on a professional networking site was changing. So probably around the time that we launched our podcast in 2019, I was probably 6 to 12 months prior to that testing on LinkedIn, putting bits of content out there, just little posts, and not what it is today where you can do videos, carousels. You can do also, we've got memes, we've got a funny button, a like button. None of that existed then. This was just generally teasing. And I saw that there was appetite for community, and I saw there was appetite for conversation. And I saw that actually the legal community was a little bit underserviced, particularly in the legal recruiting world, because from my experience, many people who wear the role that I do reach out to people and say, hey, I've got a job, or hey, are you looking for a job? That's a very transactional way of building a relationship, where I believe the art of building a relationship is to give first, give a level of value, give them a level of trust and understanding, build that reputation, and eventually they will probably come to you when the time is right. So I thought, rather than just continuously posting lots of jobs that I'm advertising for, why don't I build a community for the legal space? Why don't I start a podcast and be quite new into that journey and create a point of difference from my competitors? Because a lot of the competitors were just putting out their job adverts, were just doing the same thing. And that's great, but if nothing changes. And I saw that LinkedIn, the largest professional networking site in the world, over 1 billion people on there, if I knew I could get early mover advantage to position myself as a thought leader, someone who's putting stuff out there, and then create a vehicle, which was podcasting, which was new 6-7 years ago in this space, I knew I could get some blue ocean opportunity and move quite quickly to then get authority. Does that kind of make sense?
It does. And when I've been interviewing people, it's so funny. They're like, it's, when you look back, you can always tell a story on how you got there and make all the pieces go together. But like what Steve Jobs says, when you look backwards, you can put, he said in his speech, looking forward, you can't see that, but looking backwards, you can. So sometimes I also tell a story like, oh, this is why I did these 3 things, but I was like, I was just moving forward. So it sounds really well packaged. And so the question was, what was the time, if this is 2019, to where you were posting it, to where you like actually started to realize there was something going on here? Let's start with this. Where did you come up with Legally Speaking Podcast? Because I see on my feed all, like, now it's more harder, competitive than ever because of AI, right? There's just so much all over on the feed, and it sounds easy, right? Just keep posting, but it's not that easy. So you figure out a way to readily with what to stand out. But I'm just trying to understand like where that came from.
Yeah. So originally the podcast, as I say, was a chance to get to act as a business development tool for KC Partners, which does legal recruiting. And I always say this when I'm teaching people about podcasting or thinking, you need to have a really strong topic of influence, a TOI. And the topic of influence for our show is legal careers, right? So why was it legal careers? Because when we were thinking about how could we, bear in mind, I was a new legal recruiting business. I was competing with, imagine you're setting up a law firm and you're trying to go up against the AmLaw 100s that have been around for hundreds of years. They've got institutional clients. They've got really big, deep pockets and reserves. It's going to be quite hard to pitch to get business off those. So what can you do that's new, that's innovative, that's different, that will get you attention and actually start conversation? Because every relationship and every deal ultimately starts from a conversation. And that was how the podcast came about. So then I used that as a business development tool to go and talk to law firms. And rather than go and speak to a partner in law firm and say, hey, can I recruit for you? Because again, that's a not leading with value conversation. That's a, can you help me? And it's, I want to help you. It's, hey, you probably haven't heard of this, but we've got this new exciting form of medium. It's called podcasting. We've actually the first in the UK within our space to do that. We'd love to welcome you onto the show. We'll give you a great experience. You can come to my office. We'll give you a lovely cup of coffee. We'll create all of these media assets, which will take time off your marketing team's plate. And we'll make sure we tell your story, which is going to be really good for your talent attraction, but also retention. So your team members understand more about your journey, buy into you, can share your authentic story. And I can do that all for you within half an hour. And we'll create all of these great things. And then off the back of that, we'll also, and by the way, this is before people knew that you could repurpose and you could chop up that one piece of content into shorts, into newsletters, into everything else that a lot of people know now. I was pitching that sort of very early on to people to get them to come and give me half an hour of their time. And I'd give them a wonderful experience. And then from there, they'll be like, oh, and you also have a legal recruiting business. Yeah. Oh, actually, we're going to be hiring an associate in 2 months. Give me a call because we're going to have probably 2 or 3 vacancies. So it started that way as a sort of a way to create a thought leadership content to the candidates, i.e. the content we're putting out from that partner, which is going to be really helpful educational stuff for the candidates we want to ultimately place with that individual. And then it's also great for that individual who's looking to raise their marketing profile and get out there a little bit more. And also we're giving them value add on top of what they're normally doing, which is just producing articles, which probably aren't the most engaging, aren't necessarily reaching as well as other forms of medium at the time that we're advancing quite quickly, i.e. video and audio and podcasts.
You're really good. Like you're too good. I want
That's how it worked.
No, you're really good. And let me ask 2 different questions here. One, just to get a sense, because I don't even know these answers. What is like the metrics here? How many, oops, I lost your face. Let's move forward a second. Yeah, there you go. How many podcasts have you actually done since 2019? Let's start with that.
Yeah. So we're coming up to our 400th podcast. So we have been a weekly show ever since we launched in November of 2019. Now, the other thing that I would encourage people to do, which has helped increase the number of shows, is to release mini series underneath that. And that's a great way to super boost your downloads. So this year we've created Legally on the Move, which is we went out to Dubai earlier this year. We did a whole dedicated series interviewing partners of law firms, lawyers, legal tech entrepreneurs about the Dubai scene. Obviously it's a fast emerging legal hub. The next week, Ibiza. We're doing Legally on the Move Ibiza for the Lawyers Retreat, which is a recharge for law firm leaders. We've been to Austin, we've been to Nashville, we've been to various other places within the world. And it's a great way to then create laser focused content that links back to that topic of influence I talked about, legal careers, because we're always keeping our listeners in mind. So nearly 400 episodes, 6,500 cities in the world, top 1% in the world.
6.5 what?
6.5. We air in over 6,500 cities around the world. And that's the power of podcasting. People don't realize you'll have people in Manila. You'll have a few people in the Netherlands. You'll have people listening to your show.
When you say 6,500 cities in a world, is that data from where you can see where people are watching it from on like your podcasting tool? Like
absolutely. Yeah. On the back end, you get all the data, the metrics.
Do you have a metric that you share about how many total downloads you've ever had, or just some sort of reach metric?
The biggest metric I'm most proud of, which I think, because a lot of people see the show and they see that we're sponsored by Clio, Behemoth. You've done all of these episodes. We've got tens and hundreds of all these downloads, 20 million combined of followers from all the guests we've had over the year, all of that stuff. But I think the number one thing you should really have pride of your podcast for is the percentage of consumption. So average for podcasts is around 50 to 60%. What I mean by that is a lot of people will watch 1 or 2 minutes of a podcast and probably bounce off, or they get targeted with an ad and they'll watch a bit of it and they won't watch it start to finish. We have a nearly 90% percentage rate of consumption. So what that means is we don't have 20 million downloads a month like some of the other, Joe Rogan, for example. But what we have is the content that we are producing is teaching and educating and inspiring our audience. So when people listen to it, they listen to it end to end. And I think that's a really important metric to look at as a podcaster, because it's not necessarily about trying to get the most amount of people, because you can have 1 million people, but they only listen to 1 or 2 seconds of that, and then they bounce off. You want to create fans and turn them into super fans and want them to come with referrers. You want those people to then champion you, shout about you.
No, 100%. And like my imposter syndrome is because I know that stat, and I know that I love, like, my wife to some degree, like when we go out to dinner with other couples, I'll just interview the husband or whatever. And I try not to talk about work, those type of things, but I still interview him about his life. And she like, after dinner, she's like, Dave, people don't want to be interviewed. Just talk to them. And I'm like, oh, but I just love understanding what makes people tick. And I'm like, I guess the podcast is great. And so I'm curious, are you similar to that degree? And so like to some degree, for better or worse, I do, and also because I'm busy, but I do no pre-work. I don't meet with you ahead of time. I don't say, here's the 17 things we're going to do, because I like it to be organic and I like the challenge. And sometimes I think I'm doing okay, but not where I want to be yet. I like the challenge of seeing if I can hear exactly what you're saying and really go deep. Tell me about who are your guests? How do you structure your conversations? How long are they? What type of pre-work is involved? How important is it to actually interview somebody with the following from the beginning? I've asked you a lot of questions. Go wherever you want to start.
Yeah, I think it's the responsibility of the host to bring out the best in their guest. And so what I mean by that is we will also, like you, try and keep it to an authentic conversation. So we don't typically do a pre-call with the guest. But what we will do is we'll research the guests, and we'll ensure that we ask them questions that show that we've researched the guests in a way that we will pick out a time when they were featured in 3 or 4 years ago for a particular quote within the article, which shows that we've actually gone to deep research. And by the way, here's a tip. AI is actually fantastic for doing your deep research now on your guests. So when you ask them these questions, they're almost like they know about what you're talking about, but they're almost thinking, wow, I can't believe you've asked me that. That was something I was passionately writing about in 2016, or on top of awards. But the key focus of the conversation is we want that authentic story of like, how did they become a law firm partner here when they started there? We unpack that journey and try and bring out the lessons and learnings along the way, but also bring some entertainment and fun along the way with it as well. So yes, we do a lot of research to make sure that we can ask really thought-provoking, inspiring, interesting questions that delight hopefully our listeners, but also the guests to feel like, wow, I have been really asked about everything that I've been working part of my career, because people are passionate about their careers. People take pride in their careers, particularly people who have gone on to achieve successful things. And people have had challenges along the way, and we really pull them out and try and do our best.
First of all, I love that. That's why I do the reading of the bio ahead of time. And I'm going to take that a step further to insert different things. Even if I did it a few minutes before, it just goes to show you, like, you don't have to go over we can talk about it, but at least I know your basic story. So you're not like just having to do that. So I appreciate that. So who are you choosing? Are people so who are you choosing? And take us through the psychology of finding a guest.
So it's really evolved, and every podcast will evolve. I think you mentioned the question about red before. We never even had red branding. Like, this is all part of our rebranding in the last sort of year and a half or so. And originally when we started, obviously we're talking very much to the traditional legal career, where anyone will know that the traditional legal career is changing at the rate of knots now, particularly with the advent of technology and artificial intelligence that's coming in. So of late, we're obviously having a heavy, and that's again with our partnership with Clio, the world's largest legal technology cloud-based company in the world. We are thinking about—
I have to say that every time you say Clio.
It just rolls off the tongue. But it's also, we're proud of the fact that they've gone on to achieve amazing things, and we carry that partnership with great pride and make sure we show up as part of our partnership and responsibility to deliver the absolute best quality out there. Because yeah, I always say to everyone, it's very easy to be successful. It's far harder to stay successful. We've had this show, but like you're saying before, news feeds are busy. Things are very easy to get up and running now, a podcast. Anyone can do it, but to do it to a standard and to retain the audience, grow the audiences, that's
just to
the
keep
key.
you focused on the question, how do you find guests?
So we find guests basically linked to the topic of influence and things how are moving. Okay. I've talked about legal career journeys.
Yeah.
So we recently had a shortage of global managing partners. So we didn't have enough global managing partners of top law firms. So we look at the current 8, 9 series of what we've had. And we look in terms of where there's gaps in terms of what we've not already covered. Because bear in mind, when you've done nearly 400 episodes, you've done a legal tech entrepreneur, you've done a partner of a law firm, you've done the story from good to great, the challenges. So we're looking for gaps in terms of where we haven't had good quality content with inspirational stories.
Are you looking on LinkedIn?
Yeah, we look on LinkedIn. We look through recommendations from existing guests. We look on other people who have got other shows. They maybe have their own show. So like John Quinn, founder of Quinn Emanuel, the largest world's disputes firm. We've had him come on the show. He's got his own Disruptor podcast. So that was the way we invited him and did a collaboration.
Do you have somebody whose job is to find these guests for you, or are you doing that?
We have a team that does that, but also, again, once we also get approached by a lot of PR teams and media teams that are representing big names in the voice, again, which didn't happen when we first started, admittedly, but now we also get pitched a lot of interesting guests. And if we think it's interesting enough and relevant to the listener and ticks that topic of influence, we'll have the conversation.
I feel like a kid at a candy store right now because I can ask, I have 7 questions on my paper in front of me. Like, I don't know which direction to go because they're all fun to me, but let's just continue. Because you mentioned you go to different conferences and do that. How many of your podcasts are you actually doing on site versus just like through Zoom or whatever tool you use?
Yeah, we use a platform called Riverside FM.
Yeah, Riverside's great. Yeah,
which is pretty handy for us. We used to do the show all in person. So people who have been watching the show since season 1, 2, that was all in person in my London office. But COVID really changed the game. Yeah. COVID changed that it was accepted to do things virtually. And COVID changed the game in terms of our demographic of guest. So originally we were so focused on in-person that we were only having guests from the UK. But then, of course, we've been able to get guests from all around the world. Look, you're sat in a different time zone right now and we're doing a podcast together. That probably wasn't top of mind for people 10 years ago. It wouldn't have been a thing. Now we've obviously been switching to virtual. We've had guests from all around the world. We've taken perspectives from US, Canada, Australia, and beyond. And I think that's enriched the quality of the show, actually, because then we've talked more from international careers perspective, and that's really helped our listeners.
How far ahead are you when you do an interview? Like, how many do you have ready in the hopper?
Yeah. With a weekly show, it's amazing how quickly things come around. We can record up to 4 months in advance.
Yeah, like for sure. Have you ever thought of doing the crazy thing that I'm doing and releasing 2 a week?
We do. Like this week, we've got 2. So with the mini series I mentioned before, this is the way that we can do booster content. So again, I feel like with the weekly show, because we also have a social media strategy as well, where we have content asset distribution. So each week we've got an asset or something or on a day and a time that we have out, and we've mapped that out quite well as a strategy for the 1 week. But this week, for example, we have mini series. We're talking about agentic AI and what that means for legal careers. So we've got bumper content. So we would have 2 episodes out. And when we went to Dubai and did our mini series, then we had 3 episodes going out in a week.
And just like you said, the mini series, either going to a conference or you're picking a theme and then you're having intention of who you put on those guests. When you do, and you said when you're looking for guests, you see what's top of mind. When you're talking to a guest, generally, do you come in with a theme in mind where you want to focus on, or you just let it go where it goes?
We try and pick out what we think is what they're best known for.
Got it.
But we also do try and keep it organic and authentic. But through the research that we've done, ordinarily, because we have put in that work, we tend to hit on the points that they're passionate about. For example, Jody Hill, good friend of mine, she runs a law firm called Thrive Law, but she talks very openly about her mental health breakdown, actually, and then how she started her law firm and how mental health is so important and the well-being and the various things that she's done. So we organically, obviously, researched and got some good questions, but she came across as the thought leader on mental health within law, whilst also talking about the career journey.
Here's the $1 million question. You're a legal recruiter. How has this impacted your legal recruiting business? Or has this become the business that's bigger than the initial business? That's where you see the opportunity.
Such a good question. And the shrewd people have started to cotton on. So the answer is both. So what I mean by that is we have taken the Legally Speaking podcast, and I was intentional that I didn't call it the KC Partners podcast, because I knew eventually that this could become its own media asset. So we've trademarked we've got the intellectual property rights for the Legally Speaking podcast. And obviously we monetize through sponsorship, pay to play, community play, other sort of advertisements, and it's become its own media brand. And yes, that does earn good revenue streams now. So I could just be a full-time podcaster if that was the goal. Not right now, because I've still got loyalty and passion to the legal recruiting side, and the legal recruiting side as well is something that I enjoy. I've always been in the recruitment world, but it's definitely been a great source of lead flow in terms of candidates coming to me like, hey, I heard your episode on so-and-so. They're at Latham and Watkins. I am aspiring to get to Latham and Watkins. Would love to have a conversation with you to see how you could help me get to Latham. Sure. I'm a 3-year whatever.
What percentage of your time is focused on the podcast versus legal recruiting?
So this is the beautiful thing. And this is why people are like, how do you manage to do all this, do all of that? So the recruiting side is probably 50% of my time, and the podcasting side is 50% of my time. So it's almost now got to 50-50, but the recruiting side still outweighs from a financial perspective.
Of course. That's 80-20, of course. That's legal recruiting.
But it's allowed enough now. Yeah. It is
you get one or two big partners, you're good.
So. Exactly. But then because then when we've started really ramping up
but did this increase your brand as a legal recruiter? Did you see, because this is like the $1 million question that like some people like me, truthfully, for better or worse, I'm doing this because I know magic will come from it, but for better or worse, I don't know exactly which direction it will come from. But I know by talking to more people and doing that, because our business is a little bit different than yours. We provide online education. You had a very clear perspective. You're going to talk to the more people and you'll get more clients. Was there a very clear A plus B equals C that you saw from this?
Awareness times attention equals income. If people can understand that formula, it works well. And that's why I bet my life and show up every day on my personal brand and putting myself out there, even more so in a AI tech world, because I just strongly believe in it. But to your point, I have absolutely seen huge opportunities through just not sticking as a traditional legal recruiting business. And I hope I say this confidently, not arrogantly. The fact that I've been interviewing Shark Tank investors coming onto my show, Gary Vaynerchuk, I've collaborated with, I've been EY, Thomson Reuters, biggest brands in the world, moderating events. Yeah. I'm being flown around the world to MC events and host all of these great things, putting on events. I've got a legal event with the voice of the X Factor, America's Got Talent over here in the UK, who's our MC. All these things have happened off the back of it.
These are amazing. And so I'm just going to put the voice of whether it's a lawyer, a legal tech entrepreneur, a law student, or just a person listening to this, they're like, yeah, great. Because that's you. You're special. You love this. You know how to do this. I'm just going to be like a Joe Schmo, like Dave Schnurman, who's just like doing a podcast and he's got this background. You got this amazing thing. So what happened here? And is the point like, dude, it's been 400. So the first 250 were like, it was Dave Schnurman. And then it was, that's what Gary Vee says is consistently. But besides so I guess part A, what number do you think things changed? But everyone I'm telling you is thinking, yeah, that's you. I don't have this ability to be so good at a podcast like you are.
Obviously, I would disagree with that, because I like to encourage people always, I've seen the podcast, Rob. Are you upset? I'm like, no, I'm happy. Like, collaboration is domination. Like, it's great that there's more to educate people. Look, the reality is there is no overnight success, even in the world now where you can click a button. So you do need to put in hard work. But that comes back to the point, and maybe which I haven't actually stressed yet, which is the important point. What is my what? What is my why? And my why is to build a kinder, more collaborative, future-proof legal community. And that's what gets me out of bed every day. And I'll probably share my grandfather's story with the legal story in a minute, just to really cement that. The problem is people haven't found their passions yet. Because when you're passionate about what you do and you know what is your what, you'll find the time, you'll keep showing up, and you'll bang down doors to make sure that it absolutely works for you. Whereas at the moment, if people don't see the value in it, or they're not passionate about it, or they just see it as a nice to have, then they're not going to do it, or they're going to say, actually, no, I can't do this. But if someone has genuinely got that little light in their stomach and got that little fire in them, then I guarantee you they'll make a success of it.
It's bothering me now because I remembered, first of all, thank you for sharing that. And I'll share my why in a second. But I remembered in my research review, there was something that I saw about your grandfather. And I'm like, it's gone in my head. I was like, oh, if I could pull that out right now. But can you share the story?
Yeah, so my grandfather ran very humble beginnings. He lost his parents and his father at a very young age, at age 8. And anyway, he was the first of his family to go to law school, qualify as a lawyer, and then set up his own legal law firm. Now, where I'm from over here in the UK is Leicester, which many people will not have heard of. Obviously, it's about 100 miles north of London. And it was at the time in the 1950s, the second richest city in the UK outside of London because there's a lot of hosiery manufacturing trade. Anyway, he set up a successful law firm, span it across the country, did very well. He retired, and then one Christmas I remember very vividly, probably 10 years on after he retired, I'd go to his house and I'd see loads of Christmas cards scattered around his house, and I'd be like, Grandpa, what are all these Christmas cards? You've not got that many friends. And he said, no, I don't have that many friends. You're right. And I go, who are they from? He said, they're from clients. And I go, okay, but you retired 10 years ago. Yeah, but they're from generations beneath me clients. And I was like, okay, but still. And he's like, and generations beneath them clients. And I was like, why are they sending you Christmas cards? Because they wanted to thank me for the work that I did and my law firm, the impact it had on their families.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, that's legacy. That is a definition of a legacy. Live respected, die regretted. Remember that ever since he told me. And so I thought one day I'm going to set up my own business, carry this family legacy of law, but in a modern, different way. He said never be a lawyer. That's why I wasn't a lawyer. But I wanted to do it in a way that was digitable, traceable, and accessible. Because if I want to go and find out anything more about my late grandfather, I can't. All his friends are dead. There's nothing online, nowhere to go. It's a hassle where one day, hopefully my daughter now, who's 3, who's the apple of my eye, my everything, and can look online and say, Daddy really built this community, had this movement. She can find it. It's there. It's in the cloud, whatever it is at the time. And so my legacy is to continue that extension and do good and to deliver on that mission to inspire legal minds and transform legal futures.
I appreciate you sharing that. I got chills when you shared that because I can relate completely. I published a book in 2019 called The Fast Forward Mindset. And I'm a self-help addict, right? And I consume so many books, and it was just, there was no way I could distinguish that want and desire to write a book. And I want to write many books, but to write a book about what I've learned and how to put it together. And a big component of writing the book was the legacy for my kids. They won't take a peek at it now, but I know someday they will, because part of it's the story of growing the business, but part of it's the trying to get out of your comfort zone and stay out of there longer. And so I published the book. And then a year later, I moved my family to Barcelona, and we moved there for 2 years. And we were there in the height of COVID, and we did all that. We came back, and it transformed them from living in America to learning a new language and being out there. And I'm hopefully less than 6 months away from publishing my second book, which is essentially like a memoir of transformation, of having agency over your life. And my kids are now going to be in the book, and it's a journey of going to Barcelona and what happened there. And again, because so many people want to know, most Americans don't travel and live abroad like others do. And it's just that legacy component. And then the more digital information you put out there. So how old are your kids now?
So I've got a 3.5-year-old daughter. Yeah. So she's,
okay. That's amazing. And I love that, because at least you're not at the stage where like, you're doing it and your kids like if I always spoke to them, they're like, the district kids just don't even pay attention. You're just so old and whatever. You work from home, but I know they respect me, and I do that. But it is super important. And I think that is a great story about your grandfather and putting it out there, because when you think about intergenerational impact, like that is what it is. And my why is the more general why, but it drives it's so authentic, but it drives who I am, and it's very general. So it's not going to sound amazing, but it's the version of the term arete, which is the Greek word for living to your fullest, living exceptional. So I want to inspire, empower people to live their life to their fullest. So when they look back, they have no regrets. And that's like obviously the basic hero journey, but that's what drives me to share knowledge, to hear what you have to say, and then find the golden nuggets and put it out there. And of course, I want to live my life to the fullest. And certainly law, that's what we do. And that's where, if you go to our homepage, it says to prepare attorneys for the future of law, because so much is changing. So I can relate to that, but it is just one area. I want to disrupt education. And there's lots of areas. And so I just feel like I don't have enough time to do everything I want to do. So I just got to figure that out. And this podcast was probably to help me discover that journey.
And I'm just sat here nodding and agreeing with you. And I think I love your attitude. I love your thirst for life. And it reminds me of one of my more senior mentors, retired. And he said to me, Rob, I just want to empty my head before I'm dead. And I thought, what a lovely way to think about things. And then to the why, when you were saying chills, maybe to get a bit deep, maybe we should talk about we talked about all the good stuff, right? But business and life is challenging. So I'm very happy to share some of those challenges and things that I've been through. But your why should make you cry. Like, it needs to be that strong enough, or else you will give up. It will break you because things will come against you. Like, people just see all of this great stuff optically now. But like anything, right? You've got to knock down doors. You've got to go through tough times. You've got to be resilient enough. And some of that, unfortunately, because people haven't quite found that why, they will fold or they will give up or try a different route. And I don't want that. I want people to really find their passion, understand what that why is. And then it doesn't matter whatever gets chucked at you, you will make it happen.
I don't know if you were going to go there, but you said there were some tougher times. Is there anything
Yes.
So just to push you a little bit there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So number one is I originally started a legal recruiting business, and that had a vision, but I saw very early on the podcast and the media, and actually this could be a lost leader to start with, because obviously you have to get something off the ground, but it could be huge if we just stuck at it and got modern and understood that we could meet people where they're at, and we could learn social, we could build community, we could attract brands, we could do something modern, innovative, disruptive, like you said, with education. But with that, obviously, cultural shift, right? Certain people think, hey, no, we should just keep doing this. This is what we've always done. This is what we're good at. But remember, nothing changes and nothing changes. And if you keep going in the same direction, doing exactly what everyone else is doing, how on earth are you going to stand out? So I had to go through challenges of convincing people, or there needed to be changes within our business, which is not easy. And it's costly if you want to change things within your business, or certain people who started with you, you maybe outgrow those relationships. That can cause you a lot of stress, a lot of pressure, and a lot of worry and all of that stuff. But I knew that I could get this out there. I can get this off the ground and make it something. So that was one of the hardest times, trying to pivot the business into understanding that this is going to be a talent solutions and content focused business. Yeah. And they're both are going to complement each other tremendously, but it's going to take us, to your point, did this happen night one? Like, oh, I'm just Rob here with a microphone in a cupboard, nobody cares. But 150 episodes later, we probably started getting traction.
Thank you for sharing that. But is there a number? Is it 150? Is there a number where you realized
there's a date?
You can give me inspiration that, like, I'm on 50. Should I wait? What are we talking about here?
No, and by the way, you're only one relationship away from changing your life. So that's the other thing, right? It's not a number.
Maybe this is the relationship. Maybe.
Absolutely. Well, first things first is I love your energy. So off the back of this, I'm definitely going to be finding ways that we can collaborate, how we can help you, whatever it can be, because what you put into the world is absolutely what you get out. And I love your energy, love what you stand for. We've got so many shared values. So this absolutely is going to be more than just a podcast discussion, whatever way that goes. But no, it was a date. September 2021, we got a message from Clio. 2 years in.
Who reached out to you from Clio?
It's one of their senior marketing team at the time.
And what was the date? September what?
September 2021. So we started November 2019. So that's probably 2 years of chewing and going through.
2021, that is already after COVID, correct? If I'm okay.
Yeah.
COVID was around March. Okay. So September 2021, somebody from Clio reaches out to you. Tell us that story.
And that just started with a trial, like anything. They were like, hey, we like what you've been building. We've been following the journey. Would love to see if there's any possibilities of collaborating. And of course, I'd have obviously heard of Clio because I'm recruiting in this space and follow the legal tech space. And anyway, it started small. We started with some trials, and we've both grown together as an extension of that. And then we announced just earlier this year, obviously, our 2-year deal to renew and do lots of exciting things with Clio.
I didn't know. You said obviously, not obvious to me. So what did you announce?
Yeah, we had an exclusive deal with them that we announced earlier this year in the UK to partner with them. And with that, we're doing so many interesting things. We're doing events together. As I say, we went out to Dubai earlier this year and did a series and a co-collaborated event with them. Yeah, we're doing some fun stuff. And I think the key for anyone also, if you're thinking about partnerships in media, just not podcasting, is have shared values. So Clio's mission is to transform the legal experience for all. Our mission of the Legal Speaking podcast is to inspire legal minds and transform legal
Yeah.
futures. There's a clear synergy there.
I loved that you weren't seeking them and they reached out to you. Secondly, honestly, from the outside, I thought you worked for Clio, right? That because it's so Clio.
Yeah.
Sponsor. What's the word? Branded. Thank you. Branded. Yeah. I was like, oh, so it took a little bit. And I was like, I went to your LinkedIn. I'm like, oh, he doesn't work for Clio. That's interesting. So that's a great story. I love that success story. And I love
that's
that
how tight you should partner with your partner. If you're going to partner
Yeah.
with someone, you need to be, in my opinion, like we don't want sponsored by a burger brand. We don't want sponsored by a Pepsi brand. Like we could take the money, sure, and we get approaches all the time. It's about, is there a shared core value here about what we're trying to do? And we're trying to help improve, similar to your core value and what you're trying to do in helping people. We want to try and help people understand the current and the future of where law's going and take them on that journey and support them.
Love that. Just from a timing standpoint, 10 more minutes, okay for you?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. And maybe I do this too long for a podcast, but I do it until I feel like I've, like you said, emptied your head. And I want to break to actually share something with you on that point. About maybe 20 podcasts ago, I interviewed someone named Rebecca Green, and we were talking, and she's an amazing well-being coach. And she was like sharing her story. And like, I just heard one thing that she said, but she kept talking, is that her father recently died unexpectedly. And then we got into a really deep conversation because my mother recently died unexpectedly. And it's actually recently in 6 days is the 1 year anniversary. And I'm looking at her picture right now. I love you, Mom. And so we got into this deep conversation. It was like, I would love for you to watch this podcast at some point. It was just like, she was crying and she went into it, but she said something that has transformed the way I think about grief and life. And we're actually going to do speaking together on it. And she said, when your father or you're somebody who's your matriarch or patriarch, when they die, it's like when the library burns down, because all that knowledge, all that they've been there for you, it just disappears. And that, like, when she said that, I was like, holy smokes, that's exactly what it is. And that's why it's like, you want to empty your head or you want to put out there. I think, anyways, I'll stop at that point. And that's what resonated to me when you said that about emptying your head.
Well, firstly, condolences to Rebecca and obviously yourself for your losses. I fully empathize with that. And I love just how you spoke, even loved your mum on the podcast. Like, that's a beautiful thing. And I can't share yet because we haven't had the episode released, but we have someone linked to the legal industry that actually does a lot of talking on this about actually celebrating your death while you're living. So they talk very openly about telling your children that you're going to die, like educating them, that is the form of the process, but actually writing them letters, giving them moments, telling them about the living, and this is what this, and we're taking this so you can remember that time I was with you, and actually making it part of the natural, because particularly if something suddenly happens or there's something that, out of nowhere, freak accident, you want your children to know that you love them at every minute that they're living, you care about them, and they're going to have this memories box or as much of that empty their head moments as there. So when they go, they know that it's okay. Forget the will and the money part. I'm talking about the things that matter the most, those moments, that little sock, that little whatever. And it goes in a place that's they're very special. So they know that they can go back to that anytime. I thought that was a beautiful thing to think about.
Yeah. 2 things on that point. Number one, so my mom had cancer twice before, and my dad was also, he was an attorney and he was successful in real estate and things like that. And so many times it's like the person who's the entrepreneur or the man gets all the attention and the media and out there. And so I decided, after a conversation with somebody who's actually in Australia, I was asking him, I'm like, why did you move to Australia? And he's actually, it was my mom's decision and she died and I never asked her. And now I never know the answer. And like, from that conversation, I was like, you know what? We need to interview my mom. And literally 1 year, exactly to the day that she died, we put out that interview where my son, he's a genius of videos and 15, we interviewed her and we made a documentary about her and her life. And And
Beautiful.
that's that legacy. And so like that was like, now I have that, and like it's like her to the T, and we put it on YouTube, and it's just unbelievable. So that's one. Secondly, to your point about talk about your death, when I mentioned my book, we had a book launch party, and a good friend of mine, Todd Kringlestein, who's a big speaker and does something called Dance Floor Theory, he hosted it for me as a friend. And then he surprised me at the end. He said, everybody, Dave, I want you to close your eyes. And there's about 200 people there. And it was recorded. And is anybody who Dave had an impact on, you're going to take turns, you're going to stand up, and you're going to tell Dave the impact he's had on you in your life. And that went on, I don't know, for a while. I don't cry. I was bawling at the end of that. And like that to me felt like my funeral. Yeah. And so if we can figure out, and my son now is doing this for more people, like he's like this legacy, we could try to figure out how to unlock that so people can, attend their funeral, but not have to do it in that way. I don't know. Yeah. That really resonated with me as well. So thank you. And that's what I also like, a podcast where it's a conversation versus me just interviewing somebody, because everybody has hopefully when people are hearing this, they're relating to their own experiences. Okay. We got 5 minutes left. We're going to go down to the quick questions. I like to always ask these two questions because they're nuggets, and I'm putting together some PDFs, and we're going to do the themes and the big bullet points that you get. And one thing that everyone wants to know is, and you can look at your phone if you need to, books that have been impactful for you is the first question. And then don't answer the second question yet, but to show you can think about it, is podcasts that you listen to. So is there any books, whether specific books or entrepreneur books, and sometimes people just open up their Audible or their Kindle and they look through that, or anything more recently that you could share?
I think it's not a plug because it's not my book, but something people should check. There's the one book I'm going to mention that I've lived by as my entrepreneur, but I don't know if you're Steve Fretzen, but he runs the Be That Lawyer podcast. He did a collaboration with 101 Rainmakers. I was very kindly included into that. That's just been released this week, and that's all about helping lawyers and law firm leaders. Yeah, he's brought out his own book this week.
Gwen Whiting. Do you know her?
I know of her, not personally.
She's in the book too.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that'll be why I know of her.
I saw her posted on LinkedIn.
Yeah, awesome. So that was that's like over 100 minds. So if people are thinking and wanting to get something current, and it's got some of my business development strategies on there. In terms of a book that I've read that I love, it's publicized, but it's Good to Great by Jim Collins. And I'll tell you why that is, because I think, as I mentioned before, I would say our podcast is good. I would say we've still got work to do to get it to where I want it to be in terms of great. And so everything, hopefully, that I've articulated to you today is we are trying to strive to deliver on that mission. And what it says in the book is around the idea of this flywheel, that everything that you do is like an energy input. So at the moment, we've got momentum, and the key is you need to harness the momentum that you're building at good to take it to great. So with new additions and new energy inputs, you can continue to build that momentum, so eventually you get to great. Now, I'm paraphrasing horribly quickly.
Oh, totally. No, it's a classic book.
Yeah. And so with what are we doing with the Leagues Being podcast? Since we started as a show, we've moved it into an event. Like I mentioned, we have the Great Big Legal Offsite. This year, we've been to Dubai. We're off to Ibiza. We're bringing excitement. We're doing live events. We're bringing in Shark Tank investors. We released a crypto coin. We've done a whole community offline place. So we're always putting a new piece of innovation or disruption or interest to the show. We've released our merchandise range. We've released the opportunity for people to monetize off their books. There's whole new different things. So we're continuously trying to add to the flywheel to make sure that we can get to great.
So love it. How about the most recent book you've read? If something comes to mind.
The most recent book I'm going to go and show you is actually another legal book. 1 second.
Yeah. Thank you.
So it's called The Activator. I don't know if you've seen this. It's just come out. I'm doing a LinkedIn live.
Ooh, no. Can you move? The microphone's blocking it.
Oh, okay. Sorry. The microphone is blocking it. Let me get my headphones back on. So hopefully you can see it, or I can send you a photo.
I see it. Yeah, send a photo. Send a photo.
Cool. Yeah, it's called The Activator. Way today's Rainmakers do differently. And everyone's thinking, God, this guy just talks about business development and Rainmaker. The reality is, like, we're all looking for new business or continue to build our existing relationships. Like, contacts are good, but relationships pay. So how can you sprinkle value and go deeper into your existing relationships? And I always use the analogy, work warm. Who do you know who can introduce you to someone you don't know? But this is a great book in terms of no fluff, understanding how to genuinely win more business.
Who's the author?
The author's called Matthew Dixon. I'm going to be doing a LinkedIn live with him later this month, but that is a really good practical, tactical piece of kit that I've dived into recently. Yeah, there's a couple of books and suggestions.
Podcasts you listen to regularly?
I like just some of the sporting ones over here. I also like the High Performance podcast. I don't know if you've heard of that by Jake Humphrey. So that's a really good podcast. That's probably the one I listen to. And my friend who runs a podcast called Screw It, Just Do It. It's called Alex Chisnell, which is all about entrepreneurs. When was that moment? You know, that screw it, I'm just going to do it moment. And so I think that's great. He's had some amazing guests come on. Daniel Priestley, if people are in the online world have seen him getting busy recently, or Simon Squibb, if you've seen him, or he's had Stephen Bartlett, people like that come on. But Alex is a good friend of mine. He also used to help me when we started out. But that's a really good podcast if you want to learn about entrepreneurs' journey and where they got that moment of just screw it, just do it.
Have you ever heard of Wondery Business Wars podcast?
I haven't, but I'll check it out.
So the company's Wondery, and they do a lot of podcasts. This got me through COVID, and there's 80 episodes or so, and it takes two behemoths. So it could be Amazon versus Walmart, or UPS versus FedEx, or different things, and it takes you through 6 episodes, each one from the beginning to where they are. And they act it out. It's one of those where it's not interviews. And there's sound, and it's just holy smokes. And it's just obviously they're recreating things, but you really get a sense, as so many businesses where you just assume they were always big, and they start, and it talks about the cereal wars as one of them. And so it's just really unbelievable. So that one is really fun to me. And now we're at the top of the hour. And so my question, which I said I would ask you at the end, and I want the good, the bad, and the ugly, if you could.
Yep.
What's my grade and why?
I would give you 10 for energy, particularly given that you're recording in the morning, your time. I tend to not record in the morning, though. I'm not a morning person. So that is strong commitment to your podcast. I would say I would give you 8 for the research and questionings and understanding of what I'm getting up to. And
give me the ugly. What can I improve? Constructive criticism is always good.
Yeah, I just constructive. So hang on, let me do the praise sandwich.
Okay.
So,
I was trying to help you. I thought you had something bad. I was like, just do it. Tell me.
Just hit him with it. No, I'm always a big believer in end it on a high, right? Energy good, research pretty good. Maybe just some of the questions, which is I'm just a research. I go deep on research, so it's like really nailing. And maybe you could be like, Rob, wow, like you secured a 3. Just sprinkle a little bit of some of the successes. Right. Oh, you're a LinkedIn top voice. Like, how did you do that? Or how did you become like the first show to become a world? So just one or two little things that shines a light on your guests so they feel empowered and get that, wow, thank you so much for making me feel so special in the hot seat today. But other than that, like genuinely can't complain. I think you're great empathy. We connected. We bounced off each other. You're curious. You're gracious. And yeah, I just think you're a generally amazing human. And I would just give your listeners my favorite quote of all time. If, like you said, you want to learn one thing from this, I've learned one thing from you today. If not, maybe a lot more, actually taking on reflection, is the magic you're looking for is in the work you're avoiding. So if you've learned one thing today, don't avoid it. Go and grab that piece of magic.
The magic you're looking for is in the work you're avoiding. Is there something from your life that resonates too?
Yeah, the magic I was looking for was what's happening now, right? I knew that I shouldn't just keep doing the traditional route of what I've been doing for 10, 15 years. I knew that there would be some magic if I could follow my passion and actually follow what I was trying to do in these digital spaces, places, social podcasts, et cetera, et cetera. And now, obviously, the magic most people are looking for is in avoiding is actually understanding artificial intelligence, right? And what that actually means for your career. And I think a lot of people are still putting their head under the sand and saying, oh, don't worry about it. It'll all be fine. I think we need to educate, learn, understand the world. So I would say that's my new kind of leaning into more.
I have 20-year-olds in my company who I feel like they're acting like they're 80. I don't want to hear this. Like, I don't want to use LinkedIn to help me make a better description. I'm like, ChatGPT. I'm like, you don't? Awesome. Thank you so much. Do you have a minute to stay afterwards? Or
yeah, absolutely have a minute.
I know it's later in the day for you. Perfect. Thank you so much. And anyone who's gotten this far, we appreciate you. And Clio, I'm available for sponsorship.
Thank you very much.